Let's read the question together. Anhydrous copper 2 sulfate with the formula CuSO4 can become blue hydrated copper 2 sulfate on the addition of 5 molecules of water. This is a reversible exothermic reaction. Calculate the mass of water that is needed to fully hydrate 1.595 grams of anhydrous copper 2 sulfate. Give your answer to two significant figures. The relative atomic masses for copper, sulfur and oxygen are given to us. So what's the command word in the question? There's actually two. Calculate and also give. Let's look at the key information the examiner has given us. They've told us that anhydrous copper 2 sulfate has the formula CuSO4. That's really important. But let's look at what these words mean. What does anhydrous mean? It means without water. What does the Roman numerals 2 mean after the comma? After the copper. This tells us that copper has a 2+ charge because remember copper is a metal, so it must have a positive ion, and the number 2 there in Roman numerals tells me the charge on that. And it can become blue, so that's important, nice colour there, hydrated copper 2 sulfate. And we do that by the addition of 5 molecules of water, and this is a reversible exothermic reaction. We need to calculate the mass of the water, so that's what I'm doing, to hydrate, or fully hydrate, better still, 1.595 grams of the anhydrous copper 2 sulfate. We need to give our answer to two significant figures, and we've been given the relative atomic masses for copper, sulfur and oxygen. So we're going to be needing to use those numbers. So how are we going to go about doing this? We are going to calculate the number of moles of anhydrous copper sulfate that we have. From that, we can multiply it by 5, which gives us the moles of water, and then we can work out the mass of that water. Now, before I start, I need to work out the relative formula masses of copper sulfate and also of water. So let's calculate MR for copper sulfate is the mass of copper, which is 63.5, plus the mass of sulfur, which is 32, plus 4 lots of the mass of oxygen, so 4 times 16. And that gives you an answer of 159.5. Now, let's work out the relative formula mass for water. So we're going to do 2 lots of hydrogen, and we're going to add that to oxygen, and we get an answer of 18. So these are the relative formula masses for water and for copper sulfate. Please notice that there's no units, and also there's no units when you're looking at the relative atomic mass either. Now what we need to do is work out the number of moles of copper sulfate that we have. Now if you remember, the number of moles will equal the mass in grams, and we know that as 1.595 given to us in the question, divided by the relative formula mass, which in this case is 159.5. So then when you pop that in your calculator, you will get 0.01 moles of the original copper sulfate. Now notice in my calculations, I haven't been giving it its full title. I haven't said anhydrous copper 2 sulfate. You could do that if you want. I'm just doing that into my notes so I know what's going on. Now, for every 1 formula of copper sulfate, I've got 5 molecules of water. So the number of moles of water equals the number of moles of copper sulfate times by 5, which gives you an answer of 0.05 moles. Now, a lot of students would stop at this point, but remember, we need to calculate the mass of water. So, the mass of water will equal 0.05 moles times by the relative formula mass of water. And that will give you an answer of 2.495 grams. And again, a lot of people will stop there. But this is not the end of the story, because remember, we need to give it in two significant figures. So the actual full answer will be, I'm going to change colour now to put the actual full answer. So the mass of the water overall will be 2.5 grams, and that's two significant figures. So what are the marks for? We get 1 mark for calculating the MR of copper sulfate. We get 1 mark for calculating the MR of water. We get 1 mark for calculating the number of moles of copper sulfate, 1 mark for calculating the number of moles of water, and the final mark for reporting the mass of the water, but to two significant figures. Now, once again, if you put an answer of 2.5 grams, you would get 6 marks. But that is really, really risky, because if you've accidentally not rounded it to two significant figures, you would get no marks, even though all of your calculations would have been correct. So please show every single level of your working out.